Episode 113 of the Small Business Big Marketing Show. In this episode, I chat with franchising expert Greg Nathan about the good, the bad, and the ugly side of franchising.
Welcome to the Small Business Big Marketing Show, where successful small business owners share their secrets to take your marketing to the next level. Now here's your host, Tim Reid.
G'day everyone, and welcome back to episode 113 of Australia's #1 ranking marketing show. I'm your host, Timbo Reid. You are a motivated small business owner, in case you didn't know, and we are brought to you by the very good folk at Net Registry, who will help get your online marketing sorted across all sorts of areas. SEO, AdWords, websites, hosting, domains, you name it, guys. If you need to get yourself found online, I'd be tapping Net Registry on the shoulder right this very moment. Go to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com, click on the banner on the right-hand side where it says Net Registry, and it will be happy days forever after. Hey, got an interesting interview today. It's all about franchising, and it's probably a discussion I reckon this show should have had months ago because, you know, there are a lot of small businesses in Australia and the world that are franchisers. So probably an overdue discussion, but I'm thinking it's going to be a pretty good one. More on that in a minute. It has been a busy time for me over the last few months, been doing a lot of speaking engagements and getting in front of hundreds and hundreds of small business owners. And every now and then, you know, when you do speak to that many small businesses, you get a sense of what is floating their boat, is what's ringing their bell, and what isn't. Every now and then there's someone falling asleep in the back. I don't take that personally, but more often than not, it's those aha moments where people light up, come up afterwards, ask more questions, and you just know that, yeah, that area of small business marketing is of interest to them. And I want to share some of those with you over the coming weeks. One in particular of many is this concept of creating an experience within your business. And it was a question or a concept that I share in every single one of my presentations, which is all about, you know, it asks the question, what is the experience that a prospect goes through when they're dealing with you, right? And it's really worth considering all the elements to that. And what I suggest is that you timeline that experience from the moment a prospect comes into contact with your business online or through word of mouth or by passing your store or hearing you speak or whatever it may be, through to the time that they make an inquiry, they call you, they come into your store, they send you an email, through to the time they purchase from you, and then post-purchase. And all the way along that timeline are little, what I would call moments of truth, where you, the business owner, the marketer, have an opportunity to make it a really good experience. So what I encourage you to do is map out that little experience timeline, if you like, and look at what those moments of truth are, where you can really add some value and help build that emotional connection between you and your prospect. Because as you know, if you've been a listener for a long time, when I talk about brand, I talk about that need to build an emotional attachment between you and your customer base. And creating a great brand experience is a great example of that. Just go and have a look at some of the brands you love and think about the experience they offer you when you're dealing with them. I think Boost Juice in Australia is a great example of an experience that starts the moment you walk into a shopping centre and see and hear and smell that Boost Juice shop, through to actually buying one and then walking around the shopping centre afterwards with your Boost Juice cup and seeing other people with that Boost Juice cup, being part of the tribe, and that whole thing's an experience. Apple offer a fantastic experience. Airlines offer a great experience. So guys, it's a marketing concept that is really worth understanding, and my challenge to you is to sit down and just timeline the experience that your business offers and ask yourself, how can you improve on it? Okay, hey, talked about Net Registry earlier. The other thing I would suggest you do is go to the Small Business bigmarketing.com blog, because I get so many listener questions that Net Registry are now helping me answer those questions. And if you go to the blog, you will find some listener questions there with some wonderfully in-depth answers from the online marketing experts at Net Registry. Now, Greg Nathan is a franchising expert. Greg used to be one of the leading, if not the leading, franchisees within the Brumby's bakery group within Australia. He owned 3 of their bakeries and was absolutely nailing it at the franchisee level. He's also the author of Profitable Partnerships, which is a book all about improving your franchising relationships and changing your life as a result. He sold 60,000 copies of that book, by the way. That is not insignificant. Greg is now Australia's leading industry consultant on franchising. He has a company called the Franchise Relationships Institute. And Greg and I met about 2 weeks ago at a workshop that we were both speaking at, and got to know him and thought, you know what, gee, I haven't had this discussion around franchising at all on Small Business Big Marketing. And I think it's time we did, because, you know, franchises, A, are small businesses, and B, they're intensified small businesses because they're already part of what I would say is a big brand. You know, that's why people buy into a franchise, because of the strength of the brand. They were attracted to that, the bakery brand or the juice brand or the printing brand or whatever that franchise group is about. So I think there is a lot to learn from franchising, and you know, it's just as applicable to any small business as it is to anyone listening who is already a franchisee or a franchisor. So I got talking to Greg, said, come on the show, let's have a chat about this whole franchising thing. You know, who should buy one, who shouldn't buy one, what are the franchising areas that are really booming in the world at the moment, some of the must-dos around franchising. So we cover a lot of ground in this interview. Hope you enjoy it. Pen and paper at the ready. There is lots of marketing gems just dripping from the ceiling of this interview. I hope you enjoy it. I'll see you on the other side. Greg Nathan, welcome to Small Business Big Marketing.
Hi, Tim. A pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and it's actually a pleasure to be talking about something that we've not yet touched on after 112 or so interviews that I've done. We haven't talked about franchising, so I'm really keen, and I know many of our listeners will be keen to hear about it. So what I want to know, where I want to start, Greg, is who shouldn't buy a franchise?
Ooh, that's a great question. Look, there's a bit of a myth out there that, and it is promoted by the franchising sector itself, that somehow the franchise system is going to make you successful. It's a bit like a motor car. You can buy a car, but you still got to learn to drive it, and you can still crash into poles and do yourself some damage. So I think anyone who's not prepared to do all the normal work that they would do in running a business shouldn't buy a franchise. It's still a business, and all the normal business principles apply. It's just got another layer of opportunity and complexity overlaid over the top of the normal business.
So is it too simplistic to say, or is it too much of a generalisation to say, Greg, that there'd be a lot of people who go and buy a franchise thinking that it's all going to be done for them?
Yeah.
And
this is one of the frustrations that franchisors talk to me about. And it's probably good if we establish up front, Tim, the roles of the franchisor and the franchisee. So if anyone's listening, they don't get confused, because it is common that people get them mixed up. So the franchisor is the person or the company that owns the brand and owns the intellectual property and the systems.
Started the concept.
Yeah, often they've started, or they may have even bought the concept off another company, but they own it. And their job is to make sure that the brand is protected and to expand that brand in as many relevant markets as possible. So they basically license out their intellectual property to small business owners. And the idea, and they would be the franchisee who's paying for the rights to use this intellectual property. And so they're the franchisee, and their job is to drive the business and to do justice to the brand.
So going back to then that generalisation that I made, which you seem to agree with, which is, there are people who go and buy into a franchise thinking it's all going to be done for them. Well, really, all the business requirements still apply. You've still got to manage people. You've still got to promote. There is an additional layer of opportunity because the franchise brings brand. I mean, and
a lot of experience and a lot of, as you know, Tim, in running a business, to be profitable, a lot of the secret is to systematise as many things as possible so you're running really efficiently. And I think in franchising, this is one of the areas where the franchisee can get a competitive edge, is they can, if they follow the system and the systems have been well thought through, then they can operate incredibly efficiently because they basically do away with the learning curve of having to experiment and get their product right. In marketing, we talk about, having the right product at the right price and the right positioning and so on. Well, the franchise system should have done a lot of that pre-work for them. So a lot of their focus is in just excellence in implementation.
Yeah, right.
And not having to think about, well, how much should I sell this for and what's the best way I should, promote this product? It should have all been thought through for you. But that doesn't mean you don't have to work your butt off still.
No, of course, but that's really interesting. So what you're saying is, like, to be a successful franchisee, you should, a lot of your focus should be on implementing the rules of the franchise or the conditions of the franchise.
Yeah. And you were asking me earlier who shouldn't be a franchisee. I reckon people like you and me shouldn't be franchisees because we have big egos and we like to create new stuff and, experiment and stuff. Yeah. And that can be a real problem for us and the franchisor.
Yeah.
And I actually was a franchisee for a while.
You were?
And, And I did cause problems for myself and my franchisor because I was always fiddling with the recipes. I was in the Brumby's bakery group and, fiddling with the recipes and trying to come up with better ways to make stuff. And it's not really a good use of your time and energy.
I kind of just don't get that mindset because, you've bought into a franchise because you've been attracted by the brand. Something about that brand has appealed to you emotionally. It's like, wow, they seem to be doing something right. I want to be a part of that. Why? And I see this in franchisees that I speak to where they challenge things. They challenge the marketing or they challenge the ingredients, the recipes, or like, why would you do that? Why not just go and start your own business?
Look, it's a good question because there is some common sense we've got to apply to all this. Some things are good to challenge. So no one, in life should take everything at face value because you basically get manipulated if you don't challenge and use your sense of judgment. But it's a matter of, with marketing, I think it is good for the franchisee if the marketing department hasn't provided a rationale for why we're doing certain things or they haven't tested certain marketing programs and there's no evidence that it's going to work or not. I think it's fair enough for the franchisee to challenge, but and maybe we'll get onto this in the discussion, how you challenge people is very important.
Yeah.
Because you can be a healthy skeptic and say, can you just give me some more information about what research has been done behind this marketing program or what piloting has been done? And that's a good question to ask.
Great question.
And I think if you ask it in a respectful way and you listen, then you can have a really robust, good conversation and you may end up challenging the franchisor to go back and do a better job, in their planning. But if you become a cynic and you just kind of say, that'll never work, then, it's that self-fulfilling prophecy in life. If you think it's not going to work, well, surprise, surprise, it's probably not going to work because you want to prove yourself right.
I remember, it rings bells when I was working in advertising. It was my job to sell the creative ideas to the client, to present and convince and sell the ideas to the client. I made a point of sitting with the creative people during the concept development stage so I got to understand where on earth did that idea come from, and why is it strategically right? Why is it on brief? Why should the client buy it? And in doing that, my success rate was very high in selling the ideas into clients, because I could share the journey. And it's the same with the franchisees who might challenge the marketing.
Yes.
It's really incumbent to understand the why, isn't it?
The why is critical.
Yeah.
And I think you may have listeners on the call who are franchisors listening to the program, and I think a message I've got for people who are on that side of the fence is you really need to treat your franchisees with an enormous amount of respect. Don't patronise them. And you need to almost treat them like a client, as though you are the advertising agency and you have to explain to them the rationale as to why you're spending their money on certain things. Because in most cases, most of the marketing in a franchise, Tim, is the franchisee's money. They pool their funds into a marketing fund. Mm-hmm. And so I think the franchisee does have every right to challenge and ask the questions about, well, what's the rationale behind it? And the franchisor needs to have good answers to that.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe challenge, or at least just, I would have thought, understand how this idea come about. Why is it the right thing to do for our business?
Yep.
But
Tim, if I could just say one other thing, you were saying why do people not follow the system?
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's ego that, like, I think I can do this better. Mm-hmm. And I think if you do have a big ego, nothing wrong with a big ego, you just need to manage it and have enough self-awareness to ask yourself, am I challenging or wanting to recreate this to prove to other people how great I am, or am I doing it to be more successful for the business's sake? So they're subtly different. Mm-hmm. One's about you and one's about the business.
Go on.
Sorry. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's okay to challenge and push the boundaries a bit, but do it for the right reasons.
Yep.
I also think stay very close to what's working with your colleagues in a franchise group. And if things are working for others, chances are they'll probably work for you as well. Mm-hmm. But if you find that something, a few of you are having the same problems, or a particular system doesn't seem to quite be hitting the mark, I think that's when you need to go back to your franchisor and say, look, I've got a bit of evidence here that this isn't as working as well as it could. Explain what your evidence is, and then invite them in to have a discussion with you about how we can improve this. Mm-hmm. So you're working together in a true partnership.
Clearly, communication is everything.
It is, and I've sort of talked a lot about this idea of a profitable partnership, where you're not legally in partnership together, and some of the lawyers might get a little bit sort of nervous about talking about partnerships, because the nature of the relationship, it's a business relationship, not a legal partnership. Mm-hmm. But for all intents and purposes, you're pooling your resources together to get a competitive edge. And the more you can share knowledge and resources and ideas, the better everyone in the group's going to be. Mm-hmm.
Mm. Greg, why would I, putting aside, we won't talk specific brands here, but why would I buy, say, a juice franchise versus just going and starting a juice shop?
Yeah, I think you've got to look at the strength of a brand and how well known and how well respected that brand is, because that enables you to hit the ground running. If it's a new site, you'll virtually have customers from day one. Most businesses take a couple of years to build up, so to build up to a point where you're really breaking even and you understand the business well enough to run it really efficiently. If you kind of buy a brand that, if you use the juice analogy, and it's got that reputation, well, you should be profitable within the first month or two, providing, if it's in a busy shopping centre, the brand's well known, you'll get the support from the franchisor to get your team trained. So when you open, everything's ticking over, and the franchisor will normally have their own team working in the business with you. I was with a franchisor today, actually, and they devote a team to keep an eye on the franchisor for the franchisee for the first year of their business.
Gee,
now, it doesn't mean they're in there every week, but they're like a coach that's available on call for the first year to make sure the franchisee has mastered all the essentials. So that can save you an incredible amount of money and heartache and upfront.
Tell me, Greg, when you're deciding to, if there are people listening deciding to think, oh, you know what, I'm going to buy a franchise, do they need to look at franchises in which they have experience or passion or connections? How do you, I mean, there's a lot of franchises out there. How do you decide which one to buy?
Well, look, what's really interesting is we do a lot of research across different brands. We find that if someone is successful in a business, doesn't matter what the brand is, if that person wants to run another business in a different industry and has an interest in that other industry, they will probably be successful. And in the latest study we've done, we've found that the biggest predictor of success, the most successful franchisees, is if they've run a successful franchise before in a different industry altogether. So I think there are certain business skills that are transferable across all businesses, like, you know, people skills, business acumen, local area marketing, the stuff you talk a lot about. But it does help if you've got a genuine interest or what you called a passion for the product or the service. It helps an enormous amount. And in our latest research, we've discovered that franchisees who have a strong sense of what we call brand passion, and we define that is you feel proud to wear that brand, you know, on your uniform. When you're at a barbecue and people say, "What do?" You don't just say, you know, "I sell mortgages." You actually say, "I belong to such and such mortgage group and it's fantastic. And you know, you should look at this. And by the way, here's my business card." So they've got this passion for the product or the service. These people do significantly better, not only financially, but they have a better life. They enjoy themselves a lot more. And that counts for a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of common sense here, isn't there? It's like you're talking about, we were having a dedicated discussion about franchises, but, you know, this is just, it's applicable to any small business.
Well, it's applicable to anything in life. If you know, like, it's interesting, I was a research assistant at Monash Uni for many years, and, you know, I used to wander down the corridors looking at people in white coats, you know, in laboratories, looking at petri dishes. And if you were to wander up to one of these people and say, "What are you doing?" they would talk to you for hours about what they were doing with an incredible amount of enthusiasm. To someone else, it's like, why would you want to be poking, you know, in a petri dish all day? So I think in any area of life, if you see meaning and purpose in what you're doing, you're going to be more successful at it, you're going to have more energy, and it's going to be a lot more fun.
One of the things I hear a lot from franchisees just want to talk marketing specifically here. They do feel restricted by what they can and can't do, which, you know, it's fair. You're buying into a brand and that someone's got to control that brand, and that's the franchisor. But there are things that franchisees can do at a marketing level. Do you just want to touch on that? Yeah,
and I think just before we explain what they should and shouldn't do, it's good to understand why. That when you're talking about the brand and the brand recognition and the power of a brand, that's come about over many years often of investment. So if you look at in a typical franchise, let's say you've got 100 franchisees and, you know, they might be pouring, you know, as a group, you know, $20 million a year into the brand between them. And you accumulate that over years, you're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars have gone into building a certain brand profile or a positioning of the brand. You don't want people messing with that. And it only takes one person to do something stupid, particularly these days with the power of social media. One bad customer experience can go viral and do serious damage to the other 99 franchisees who have invested in that brand, not to mention the 100 who are yet to come and the franchisor. So franchise groups can be quite precious, and rightly so, about how the brand is being used. So that's the reason why they can almost come across Nazi-like in terms of, you must not do this, and, you know, if you do that, you'll be in trouble. Now, in terms of, the parameters, it's important the franchisor explains to the franchisees, this is what our brand means, like the values that we're trying to promote through the brand. This is the sort of reputation we want people for our group to have. And if we were to ask people, what do you think about this brand? We want them all to say these sorts of things. So it's important franchise groups have a lot of these discussions with their franchisees. And then it's a matter of saying, now, given that we all understand this, go out and do whatever you want to do, but make sure that it doesn't undermine any of these things that we've talked about. And I think that's important. So franchisees do need to be given a lot of freedom to try out new things, as long as they, if the brand stands for high quality and speed, that and a certain flavour, then the franchisee's obviously got to stick to those things.
Yeah.
But that being said, there's often a whole history of things that have worked, and a smart franchisee would be looking to what has worked with other franchisees and worked in the past, and just piggyback on that. You don't need to often reinvent a lot of new stuff.
We used to do this at Flight Centre. Flight Centre isn't a franchise group, but we had a lot of stores out there. And as marketing manager, one of the marketing managers at Flight Centre, we all made a point of getting together on a weekly basis, because generally, one of the marketing managers was good at generating media coverage. Another one was really good at putting packages together with wholesalers. Another one seemed to nail their advertising, and it was like, let's share. Like, how did you do that? How did you do that? And then, exchange of that information was just critical. It allowed us all to grow.
And this is one of the great things about franchise groups. When they're well managed and well led, they spend quite a lot of time getting the franchisees together, and they almost act like facilitators. So you might get, 30 franchisees in a room in round tables, and you do this, Tim, I've seen you do this in your seminars, and get them sharing amongst each other. Yeah. What's something you've done that added, got extra dollars in the average sale per customer, or attracted more customers into your business? And that sharing of information can be magnified by 100 or 200 stores. That's very powerful.
No, let's just expand on that, because without going into specifics, listeners, Greg and I were talking at a conference last week, and it was amazing. I heard one franchisee share an idea with one of the counter staff from this franchise group, and it was an idea that generated that one store an extra $300 a week. So it was like, wow, there must be a lot of those ideas floating around this group that just aren't getting heard. So we literally went round the table and got each table to share one idea that could generate additional dollars immediately the next day. And it was amazing what came out, wasn't it? It
was. And in fact, I know I've heard that one store's gone back and implemented one of those ideas in their business immediately.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things in the franchise groups, they have a role called a field consultant or a field manager. These people go around, and they usually, come once a month and spend a couple of hours in your business. Smart franchisees are picking the brains of these people and saying, tell me what other franchisees are doing at the moment that's working for them. And what I want you to do is to explain to me how you think I could apply that into my business, and let's work together and do up a little marketing plan around some of these ideas. So that's really that's going to the next level. So not only are you driving the franchise systems well, but you're also squeezing every bit of value out of the staff of the franchisor to give you that extra good service.
Greg, it's been a lovely, happy conversation up until now, but I'm guessing you've got some horror stories. I am guessing there are some stories deep down that would make any franchisee or franchisor squirm.
Yeah. I think,
Go on, share some.
All right. Well, I think, I explained earlier, there's two roles, the franchisee and the franchisor, and the horror stories can come, from either.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get horror stories coming because the parties just clash together and produce something terrible. So let's start with the franchisor.
Okay. I'm looking forward to this.
All right. So if the franchisor is not mature enough in terms of their leadership ability, and leadership is all about getting other people to put goals and aspirations into practice. And so if you're turning off the franchisees against you rather than getting them on side, that can produce a lot of pain and disappointment for the whole group. Also, from the franchisor's point of view, if they may be well-intentioned and they may be quite charismatic in their leadership style, but if they're not doing thorough research before rolling out new initiatives, they can cause a lot of damage. So if I'm one business owner with one business and I introduce a new product and it crashes and burns, well, I'll sort of pay the consequences. But imagine rolling out something to 100 stores at once and it crashes and burns, how much damage and anger that would create amongst the group and also amongst the customers in some cases. So the horror story there is a franchisor that doesn't know what they're doing. And to a certain extent, you can protect yourself against that by doing good research when you buy into the franchise. However, there's nothing to stop franchise companies, as in any organisations, changing their staff. So while you were the marketing manager at a particular company, you may leave and another marketing manager comes along and that person might be a bit of a disaster and everyone pays the price. So sometimes you can protect yourself before getting in, and sometimes if you don't believe that someone in the franchise or company is doing a good job, you owe it to yourself and your fellow franchisees to let it be known what your concern is, why you have a concern, and take it to the right people, in a mature way and negotiate a way forward. Now, from the franchisee's point of view, sometimes you'll get franchisees who are very political and for whatever reason, they have a need to be the centre of attention. And if they're not happy about something, they can cause a bit of mischief by getting other franchisees to form almost like a lobby group. And have secret meetings, and I've even seen franchisees get together to overthrow the franchisor like a coup. And this is incredibly damaging to a group because it distracts the franchisees from doing what they really need to be focusing on, which is serving customers and creating happy customers. And the group gets very internally focused and turns into a bit of a bloody battleground for a while. Lawyers can get involved. And I've seen sales in those sorts of situations. Across a group, sales will drop 10% in a month, right across the group.
And you made a point of this in your book, Profitable Partnerships, which was a fantastic read, by the way. And I just thought, franchisees need to remember that they're representing an overarching brand. And if I were to go into, let's just say Baker's Delight in my local suburb and had a bad experience, and then I go interstate and go to another Baker's Delight, that reflects on that other Baker's Delight interstate. It
affects on everybody.
It affects on everyone, and that in itself is, I guess, that's both the positive and the negative of franchising.
Well, there's been. I pay a bit of interest to this for obvious reasons because this is my living, but I particularly my ears prick up when I see a franchise brand mentioned in the media, and there's been a few recently. There's been some unfortunate incidents. It wasn't anybody's fault. But a customer did have a bad experience and the media got hold of it and have plastered it, over the newspapers and on social media. In other cases, a franchisee or even the staff of a franchisee has done the wrong thing by a customer and it's got out into the media. In one case, a very large, very well-respected franchise brand in Australia, one of the franchisees was underpaying their staff and not only did they get into trouble and they got fined quite a few $1,000s by the government agency, but it was all over the media that this particular brand was underpaying its staff. But in fact, it was only one store. So this is the dark side, the underbelly of belonging to a group.
You're putting your trust in not just the franchisor, but every franchisee to do the right thing. I want to just talk globally, I'm really interested to know, well, what is the most successful franchise in the world? I don't know whether you know that question. I don't mean to surprise you with it, but what is the most successful in the world? And where's the growth area in franchising at the moment?
Yeah, all right. Now, I'm not avoiding your question, Tim.
Come on.
But when you say success...
Yeah.
Because a lot of the entrepreneur magazines and so on, they have these, and even BRW does this as well. They say, what's the fastest growing?
Okay, let's break it down. What's the franchise group that has the most franchisees in the world? Let's start there.
Yeah, I think 7-Eleven
really
would be up there. Yep, they have a lot of, I don't know the actual number, but you're looking at tens of thousands of franchisees around the world. Mm-hmm. And Subway would be way up there as well, in terms of numbers of franchisees. Yeah.
Okay, then what's another way of carving up that, answering that question?
I would say, who's making the most money, and who's kind of in a sweet spot that they're still going to be around in three to 5 years.
Good two questions.
All very well to be a flash in the pan.
Yep.
And look, there's a few industries that are starting to emerge as quite strong growth industries. Aged care is, in America in particular, has emerged as a very strong growth industry. And there's many franchise groups who are doing very well in that space. It's starting to gain traction in Australia. So that would be one interesting area. Home services have, been a growth industry for the last 20 years, cleaning and dog washing and so on. And look, while you may not end up, being a millionaire in running a home services franchise, if you organise yourself well, and you follow your franchisor's guidelines, and you may bring on a couple of staff to help you, you can make a very good profit from some of those small businesses for a very small investment up front. So you might invest, 20 or 30 grand up front, and you're not just buying yourself a job, you are actually generating a good lifestyle for yourself and a very good, cash flow and a very good profit.
I always thought gyms as a overarching franchise name has been quite an interesting case study in branding. For overseas listeners, gyms started off as Jim's Mowing. It was a garden maintenance service business, but there's now Jim's Dog Wash, Jim's Antennas, Jim's Bookkeeping. I mean, I think there's 10.
It's got over 30 different sectors, different types of businesses.
Wow.
Yeah, and look, some of those businesses do very well. Some wouldn't do as well, and that's where you've got to do your homework. The most useful thing you can do if you're looking to buy into a franchise, talk to at least 12 franchisees and ask them. I mean, don't be afraid to ask the really blunt questions like, can you tell me how much money you're making, and how long did it take you to get to break even? And knowing what you know now, would you do it again? And if not, why not?
Yeah, great questions.
Yeah.
What's your favourite franchise, Greg?
I don't answer that question. I'll tell you why.
And this comes helping lots.
Yeah, this comes back to something we touched on earlier. Yeah. That the leadership of the franchise group makes all the difference. And I can give you like two franchise chains who are operating in the same industry, selling almost the same product, and one is blitzing it. Happy franchisees, profitable, happy customers, and the other is not going that well. And the reason inevitably is who's leading the group.
Let me rephrase the question then and ask you, as a marketer, which franchise brand do you look at going, wow, they've done a really good job at creating a fantastically strong brand?
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned Baker's Delight earlier, I think the Gillespies who founded that group have done a fantastic job at, they tick most of the boxes in terms of good culture, profitable business model, and they're constantly looking to reinvent how they're marketing themselves to the market, and they put a lot of emphasis on their local franchisees being local area marketing experts.
Yeah, do they?
Yeah, so, being the local hero in terms of the local bakery, getting involved, they have school children coming into the bakeries, doing tours, and they really do a nice job at connecting with the community at the local level. And I know that they're very passionate about preserving the profit margins of the franchisee. So that'd be an example of a group that's been going now for over 20, probably nearly 30 years, and have managed to continue to reinvent themselves and keep their business model fresh and profitable. I think the Boost Juice team have done a great job in, keeping their culture vibrant and keeping, their product fresh. And they've got a very clear idea of what their brand stands for, and they live it.
Yeah,
in terms of how they train their stores and so on. Look, there's some good brands in the mortgage broking industry. I think Smartline have done a good job.
What's the weirdest franchise you've ever seen?
The weirdest franchise. There's a dog poop poop scoop franchise.
Goodness me. At what point would you go, you've got the brochures. I always like thinking, going into that the meeting where they made the decision to go into that. It's like you got the brochures in front of you, you're going to bread, you're going to juices, then there's that poop scooping franchise opportunity. Like, what would, the numbers would have to be so incredibly good.
Oh, I think some people just like to serve. I don't think you'd be a millionaire in that one, but it's a little business that some people, might want to, young people might want to get into.
Oh, there's so many lines there.
Yeah.
There's so many lines, but I just don't want to have to put the censored tick on the iTunes listing.
But it is interesting that you could virtually say in every conceivable industry in the world,
there's a franchise.
I reckon you'll find a franchise in there.
Yeah, right.
And in the early days of, when I was sort of getting my business set up, in farming, there was some very interesting franchises, insemination of sheep franchises, seed franchises where they're sorting seed sizes. So you can virtually specialise through, developing a very efficient system around something, and providing it's sustainable, you can build a very good business model around it.
Yeah, fascinating. Greg, thank you so much for sharing this. Now, you've got your own business, which is the Franchise Relationships Institute. So you are out there marketing your own business. You've written a book, big tick, love that. I think that's a great marketing tool, better than handing a business card over. You did it to me last week. You gave me your book instead of the business card.
I did, and look, do you know that I've never advertised that book? I've never paid for advertising.
Yeah.
And we've sold over 60,000 copies of that book globally.
Goodness.
And most of it is just word of mouth.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
That's tremendous. What other marketing do you do in your business?
I give talks to industry associations. So I try and get in front of my potential audience. And, if you're giving a talk at a conference, for instance, for our sort of business, you might have, 30 potential clients in the audience. If you just do a really good job, don't try and sell yourself, just deliver really good content that adds value. People will naturally it builds trust, and, people will want to work with you. A lot of our work is, because I'm fanatical about quality, we have a 96% satisfaction rate from our clients. We get a lot of client referral and a lot of repeat business. So we've got clients working with us, for same clients since I started the business 23 years ago.
What are you going to do about those 4% that are dissatisfied?
Talk to them.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not that they're dissatisfied. It's just that we have a formula and we calculate a score, and we have a 96% score. So after every job I do, we actually seek feedback from the client. What do we do well? How could we improve? And I read all those, and I take everything on board.
I'm interested in your industry talk strategy, because I think that's a fantastic strategy that listeners, I encourage you to get up on stages and speak, because it is a good marketing strategy. How do you actively pursue opportunities to talk at industry events? Do you have someone identifying industry events ongoing? Do you just get asked to attend them? How's it work?
A lot of, good business, as you know, Tim, is done through relationships. And this is a tip for everybody. In our research, we've sort of found again and again that successful people pay a lot of attention to the relationships they build. They build what I would call a network of supporters for their business. So I think if you've got that brand passion for what you do, just keep talking to people and about what you do and why it's so fantastic. And you'll inevitably find, I don't know how this works, but the right people just seem to come along from time to time and say, you're so enthusiastic about what you do. We've got this, talk coming up or a conference coming up. Would you be interested in coming along? So I think just tell as many people as possible about what you do.
Yeah.
Do good work. And
write a book.
The book is very useful. Yeah, I have to say that it gives you a level of credibility that you can't get by just telling people that you're good.
Yeah.
I also, the first 10 years of my business, Tim, I did a lot of free work, like volunteer work on committees. So I joined the franchise in our industry. It's the franchise sector, the Franchise Council of Australia. I joined committees. I spent a lot of time contributing my time. I actually organised conferences for them. Mm-hmm. And in organising the conference, often they'll say, oh, well, you should also have a spot as a speaker at the conference as well. Yeah. So it's a little bit of you help others and others will help you.
Greg, Nathan, it's fantastic to have the franchise conversation on small business, big marketing. I think it should have been done sooner. So thanks so much for appearing.
Thanks, Tim. Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that chat, that fireside chat with Greg. Lots to share there. In fact, one of the things I've asked Greg to do in the future is to hook me up with a successful franchisee who's doing great local area marketing, who's going about owning their local area in a very big way. So he has promised to do that, and that will be an upcoming interview. I'm just having a look at Greg's book, which, as I said at the start, is called Profitable Partnerships. And he's got a wonderful quote in here which says, in a franchise network, when people stop sharing knowledge and resources, you no longer have a network, but a bunch of individuals battling it out alone. And for those of you who don't know, I've just started my deep dive mastermind, and it's bringing together small business owners around a virtual table each week and batting it out together, because alone we are nowhere near as powerful as the multiple. And I had my first session this week with 9 small business owners sitting around a virtual table via webinar hosted by me, and the power of that mastermind was fantastic. Everyone sitting around the virtual table got to pose a marketing question of me, which I answered, but the power of the group answering the questions, providing solutions as well, was incredible. And just, Greg, that comment about battling it out alone, as small business owners, we do that so often. We're trapped in our shops or behind our computers and we're working alone, and it can be a lonely existence. So I do encourage you to, first of all, get out there and find other small business owners just like you, and network and share ideas on a regular basis. Diarise it. If you want to take it one step further, check out deepdivemastermind.com, because that is my mastermind group, and there is a waiting list now forming for the next one. I only ever take 10 at a time. There is a waiting list for the next one, which will open up in the new year in 2013. So look out for that. It is a great way of ensuring that you stay on marketing track. Enough of that. Thank you for tuning in. Smallbusinessbigmarketing.com is where you can find out all about me and the show, all those wonderful past interviews where there have been some amazing marketing gems shared by my guest. Got some big guests coming up too, by the way, in the weeks to come. We never rest at Small Business Big Marketing headquarters. Until next time, may your marketing be absolutely tremendous. See you next time. Bye.
You've been listening to the Small Business Big Marketing Show with Tim Reid. Want more marketing goodness? Then visit smallbusinessbigmarketing.com.